Red Bull's been shaking up things on the grid with snarky comments about their not so competitive rivals, Ferrari and Mercedes. Although the comments are quite petty, why beat a man when he is down? We can't deny that some of the comments are actually right. Without any further delay, let's look right into these snarky comments and why they were made. The 2022 F1 season was a big flop because it was mainly Red Bull in the lead, and all the other teams, including Ferrari and Mercedes, trying to find a way to remain on the grid. If their vehicles were not bouncing up and down the grid, the engine was acting up. It was a complete menace. When the season ended, it wasn't a time to rest as usual for the teams, including Red Bull. There were reports of teams like Ferrari and Mercedes making incredible upgrades to the 2023 car that would make them more competitive. Even Red Bull had to double up their efforts so that they wouldn't fall short. Everyone couldn't wait for the 2023 season to start due to how competitive they thought it would be, but unfortunately, the reports we heard were all hype. In the real sense, Red Bull built a rocket, while other teams including Mercedes and Ferrari built snails. Yeah, the margin is that wide, and it's quite heartbreaking. Currently, Red Bull drivers Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez are in the lead with a 1-2 position after winning most of the races, while other teams are far behind with over 30 points difference since none of them have won even one race since the season started. Even Red Bull's principal, Christian Horner, couldn't hide his disappointment over other teams' underperformance, especially that of their main rivals, Ferrari and Mercedes. He said, "We feel that we've made a good step from RB19 into 19, but the kind of step that you would expect. I think it's more that it feels like others have lost ground." To further emphasize his point, he said, "I think it surprised us that the others are perhaps underdelivered compared to where they were last year." What a nice way to say, "So this was all you got, guys. Why do we even bother stressing?" But not to be tagged as overconfident and proud, he rounded off his statement by saying that the rivals were surely working hard to pick up their pace and they shouldn't be underestimated. But no doubt that they will be looking to address that, and I'm sure they're working hard to address that, so big gains could come quite quickly. That must have stung the rivals it was directed at, especially Mercedes, and it's a surprise that Toto Wolff, Mercedes team principal, didn't blame everything on the FIA like he did in the 2022 season. When the new regulations were made last season, several teams, especially Mercedes, found it hard to make the necessary adjustments. Initially, they tried to fix the problems with their cars, but they kept falling short, so they decided to take another route. The Mercedes team used every opportunity they got to whine about how their poor car performance was because of the FIA's regulations and not their own fault. What made it worse for the Mercedes team was that everyone else seemed to be adjusting well to the changes, and they were struggling. Even during an episode of F1's Drive to Survive, Toto Wolff had a meltdown at the team's principals meeting when everyone told him to just fix his car. His response was him throwing a fit and yelling that they were all conspiring against him. Reminds me of a child throwing a tantrum for not getting candy. Although it was good comic relief on the show, it also gave us further insight into how much Mercedes was in denial last season. Although the Mercedes team have been fairly quiet this season, several people can't help but blame them for some other changes the FIA have made during races. It's believed that the FIA didn't totally ignore Mercedes' complaints last season, and took some steps to satisfy them. An example is the shortening of the DRS zones at races, and Helmut Marko of Red Bull is one of those who believes that the constant whining of the Mercedes team last season was what led to that move. Although it's unfair to point fingers, Marko just needed someone to blame for the shortening of the DRS zone because it's not good for his team. If you've seen Red Bull's 2023 car, RB19 on the grid, you'll attest to the fact that the car is amazing as the speed is very impressive. Even if you've not seen it, the result is all the proof you need. But the truth is, the speed is not the most impressive part, it's the car's overtaking capabilities. This is because of the structure of the DRS, drag reduction system, which gives it the ability to overtake. When the RB19 launches its DRS, it has a huge edge over the car ahead, even if they also have a DRS. Red Bull created a means to delay the airflow over their beam wing and diffuse it, so when they launch the DRS, it massively improves the level of drag reduction they receive. Having such an incredible DRS often allows them to comfortably win the race, and according to all the new rules and regulations, it shows that the FIA wants the competition to be as fair as possible, not allowing anyone to have the edge over their rivals. And for this reason, the DRS zones got shortened because their data showed that it was too easy to overtake in the zone. Besides Red Bull, several drivers are not pleased with the shortening of the DRS zone. Even George Russell of the Mercedes team has made comments about how the reduction of the DRS zone was not necessarily the right move. Let's look at the race at Baku. There were hardly any overtakes and it was painfully boring and colourless. I must say that I kept yawning while watching. Yes, it was that unexciting. This came as a surprise because the Azerbaijan Grand Prix has a reputation for being very exciting, and the shortened DRS zone was the reason behind the lack of excitement. George Russell also confirmed that Baku was boring due to the shortened DRS. I think all of us didn't really understand why they've been shortened. None of us were consulted about it, or asked our opinions on it. And I think the race speaks for itself in Baku. Clearly in Baku, it was way too short. But despite Russell being against the shortened DRS zone, showing that the Mercedes team had nothing to do with it, Marko wasn't convinced. When he was asked if the reduction was made so that Red Bull would have less of an advantage over others, his response was, "Exactly. We have to stop intervening with these kinds of manipulative tricks. It is bizarre that Mercedes of all teams is moaning. For years Mercedes had the superior engine, and they were much farther ahead of the competition than we are now. And then when you deliver a flop of a car 2 years in a row, you might be wise to focus on that." See how he skillfully made a jab at Mercedes' car under performance? That was what I meant by being petty. The fact that Mercedes didn't deserve that because they had nothing to do with it made the comment even more hurtful. Although indeed the Mercedes W14 has not been impressive so far, drivers Hamilton and Russell have been putting in great efforts to make the most of what they have. In Miami, Hamilton was the third fastest driver on the grid with an average of 348 km per hour. That's some improvement. But Marko didn't stop at Mercedes. The Ferrari team also got their fair share of ruthless comments. During the qualifying race at the Miami GP, Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc lost control of his car at turn 7 during his final Q3 run. The crash brought out the red flag and it stopped anyone else from getting into a second lap. What made it worse for the Ferrari driver was that the same thing happened at the same corner the day before during his practice. The young driver was so sad about his mistake. He said, "More than a track, I think what's unacceptable is making twice the same mistake in the same corner. I am really disappointed with myself." And this was the moment Marko chose to make a sarcastic comment about Leclerc. He said, "To put it sarcastically, you can't drive out behind Leclerc," referring to the fact that Max Verstappen was one of those who couldn't move on to the second lap due to Leclerc's crash. But Sergio Perez, Verstappen's teammate who wasn't behind, was able to take pole position. As regards Verstappen and his teammates, there might be trouble in the little paradise as the two drivers are seriously competing for the championship title. You might wonder why this is a problem. Let's break it down. In 2022, the RB18 was a great car, but it was more suitable for Verstappen's driving skills, and Sergio Perez had to make do with what he had. But this 2023 vehicle seems to be good enough for the two drivers, and this has led to a higher level of competition between them. The Mexican driver has had 2 wins against Verstappen's 3 wins, but what makes it more interesting is that he is facing his teammates heads on and not backing down. This is seen in Perez's performance at Jeddah and Baku. With Perez's new determination and performance so far, gone are the days of him making moves that will benefit just his teammate. One can't actually blame him for the way Verstappen treated him last season. With the competition between them heating up, Marko has told Verstappen that despite being the team's star driver, he has to step up his game if he wants to remain the champion. This is because they decided not to intervene in the competition and allow Sergio Perez to reach his full potential. So with the teammates competing fiercely for the championship title, the atmosphere in the team will be tense because although they publicly claim not to pick sides, some will silently root for Verstappen, while some Perez. And since the teammates are not very fond of each other, the competition might get so fierce that it will hurt the team. Verstappen probably saw this coming and wanted to remain the star of the team. That was why he was secretly pushing for Perez to be replaced with Daniel Ricciardo. How cunning of him. After some very unimpressive seasons with the McLaren team, Ricciardo's contract was terminated and he was left with nowhere to go. With him available, Verstappen began secretly pushing for him to replace Perez, but Ricciardo got accepted as the third driver instead. Although the deal about him replacing Perez has been squashed, it seems like he might have a chance on the AlphaTauri team. That is, if the rumours about Helmut Marko giving Nick De Vries a 3-race ultimatum to do better or be off the team. To me, even if the rumours are true, I don't think Ricciardo might be their desired replacement, as his performance over the years are not top team quality. But time will tell, won't it?